ausgeschaltet und dann sagst du so ganz alleine.
Ich glaube, der hatte so eine kleine Schuhe nicht an. Der hing ganz alleine so mit den Füßen auf dem Tisch.
Das war echt gut. Ja, weil das wird halt, das wird übertragen, halt natürlich nicht für alle einfach, das ist ja nicht halt dieses zurück. Und wird halt auch jeder Mitarbeiter damit. Ich glaube, hier in Toronto ist gerade bei der
Das sind ja auch sehr, muss man aber auch da. Und rechts sind wir.
Das sind die, ja, das sind die. Ja, ich will das halt einfach so wenig. Ist ja so. Ja, das ist auch bis jetzt 9 in San Francisco auch.
Toronto scheint sehr beschäftigt zu sein.
Toronto ist jetzt Mittag. Die ist 12 Uhr Mittag.
Ja, die essen auch.
Also wir können das jetzt in der Pause mit Kochen nicht essen.
Toronto ist East Coast Zeit?
Ja. Vancouver, das ist Informatiker.
Ja, ja.
Portland war aber auch.
Sehr
Portland war noch nicht unterschiedlich.
Ja.
Ja. Event unterhalten, beziehungsweise das Event
Das Telefon dafür die Mail bekommen habe. Ja, ist auch sehr gut. Ich bin ja auch gekommen.
Setz dich. Hi, cool, dass du da bist. Julia. Hallo. Ich finde es ein bisschen schade, dass wir nicht mit dem Schreiben
Gibt es dieses schöne Beispiel, hier dafür gesorgt wird, dass die Hobby-Teacher das Emoji bekommen, das ist schon ein Bild, sind ihre. Und das muss jetzt mal schaffen. Das ist eine gute Frage, aber
es geht da, also da kann man relativ schnell eine Diskussion noch mit los.
das ist die Folge, die ich gehört habe, The Virtue und wo sie tatsächlich genau überlegen, welche Emoji benutzt du die mit einer Farbe und so. Das ist die nächste Folge, die ich hören will.
Ich finde das
aber ich verstehe, dass es wichtig ist, dass es diese Option steht. Deswegen ist das auch wichtig. Ja, man weiß es, was ich so das Code das ist eine sehr einfache Funktion, die man haben kann.
Do you want to come over here? You don't have to, but it would be. I have to change it.
Yes. Yes.
Zoom out a bit so that
You want to stay at the volume.
Hello? Are we good? Hello, Mozilla. Hello, people in Berlin. It's nighttime in Berlin. Thank you very much for coming and joining us for this conversation. We have 3 super interesting guests tonight. We're going to be talking about emojis. Talk Emoji, to me, is the title of this talk. And we wanted to start on a light note by asking everybody who's watching in Slack or on IRC, if you're in the speaker series channel or if you're on the Air Mozilla channel, feel free to add an emoji that you feel represents you. That's part of what we're talking about tonight, how emojis show up on the internet, how they show up in our personal lives, how they are evolving as a form of language in their own right. And I've asked the speakers tonight to introduce themselves with an emoji as well. Daniel, Yudya, and Tatiana, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Daniel, I wonder if we could start with you. Have you got an emoji that you feel represents you?
Well, I think I have to take the man bald. He's quite new to Unicode, but that's what represents me. So, but as I don't care too much about my hair because there's nothing to care anymore, I would rather take colon and bracket closed, which is the classic smiley when I'm in a good mood.
Yudya, have you found one?
Yeah, the cup of coffee, because without the cup of coffee, I wouldn't be here today. So
You have to turn on the mic. Say it again.
mine would be a cup of coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought a bit about it, and I would like to pick the scientist emoji, but then I realized that even though there's a woman scientist, she's a chemist with a bubbling beaker and a lab coat, and that's not the kind of science I do. So, yeah, I feel a little bit torn there.
For our evening tonight, I'll be Thinky Face. Look forward to learning from you guys. This whole talk came about Alice, who works on the marketing team here in Berlin, took the initiative to organize this talk, partly inspired by an article that we did in the Internet Health Report. I'm the editor of Mozilla's Internet Health Report, and we had one article in there about emoji politics, we called it, where grassroots meets big tech. And it was one of our positive stories. I mean, you could take a negative lens on this, but the positive framing was really that it's an aspect of the internet that people can get involved in and are actively participating in. It's a technical format and a way of communicating that people themselves are creating through use and through design and through engagement with a somewhat democratic process, even if it's maybe a little problematic. Daniel, if we could start with you, this is a project that you're involved in, OpenMoji. Could you describe what this is and maybe why you've created this?
Yeah, we just wanted to try whether we can make an open source emoji system because when you look at Emojipedia, then you see there are 5-6 major systems from Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, and so on. And my colleague Benedikt Groß and me, we thought, let's try with students whether there are also alternatives from a design point of view. And that was quite cool because each student in the course had to make their design of 36 emojis that we chose. And then we made a style guide together. We decided for one option. And yeah, for me, it was most interesting that we had 20 students who committed to one style guide and one system. And at the end of the semester, there were more emoji than we expected, but there's still a long time to go. But it's an ongoing project.
And are these emoji that I can access through my Apple phone or Android phone?
That's not the easiest part. You can download a sticker pack for iOS and you can use them in iMessages, but I don't know, Android, maybe you should copy them from the website, but that's a problem because emoji are a part of the operating systems, the mobile and desktop operating systems, so we can't install them like fonts yet.
Mm-hmm.
But we also made a color font and we'll improve that, so maybe on the desktop at least there will be easier access in the future.
And the next slide I was going to show, it just says Daniel slides here, but the next slide was supposed to show who actually makes the decisions at the Unicode consortium, who actually decides on which emojis are chosen.
Basically, it's the Unicode consortium with big tech companies as members, and there's a basic set now, and each year they decide from the proposals that come in which emoji are worth including in the Unicode standard. Sometimes the decisions are fast, sometimes they take a while. It took years until they adopted the power symbol, power on symbol. And yeah, I think it's really strange that generic stuff like a normal table or a bottle is still not in there in Unicode. There's a baby bottle or a lotion bottle, but no generic bottle.
Well, let's talk about what else isn't in there. I think we have an old version of the slides, Alice.
I know it's. I don't know if the computer is not online.
Ricardo? Okay, I can do that. Let's see. Can you help me? So let's talk about these ones that we have here. Yudia, you've been speaking publicly about emojis. You're involved in a nonprofit organization that defends rights of people with disabilities. Can you tell me about what this initiative is and what it was created in response to?
Yeah, these are emojis from the big charity organization Aktion Mensch in Germany, and they are called inclusive. And when we see them, we can see that the people have disabilities, but they are also shown as fast. You saw, or you will see the girl with the wheelchair and the fire, so she's very fast, or a painter who has no arms and just paints with the mouth. And that are emojis that show disabled people, but they show them also in an active way, because many people think that a disability defines the whole person and the whole character of a person, and that's not like it. So these are the ones that we are now seeing that Unicode proposed, and that will be in January rolled out. So maybe we can switch to them. Or yeah, and there we see only the person and the disability, and here we also see them doing something or being sportive, or yeah.
Just have to refresh again. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's okay. So And that's what we are talking about. So, before January now, when we look at our keyboards in WhatsApp, for example, the symbol for wheelchair is between the parking space sign and the toilet sign. So this is the only action where we see them. So, and where we recognize the symbol for, okay, wheelchair, everyone has seen it, but this is not what we are doing all the time. We are not searching all the time the parking space, and that's why we want to be active, or to be shown actively. And the problem with the inclumojis with Aktion Mensch was that there has to be a different kind of keyboard. You have to download an app, so it's not very practical. And we want to to develop some emojis that are really practical, that show us in all our variety. Maybe the space woman, who has also a disability, because we have different kind of skin tones already, so we can just add that.
These are the ones that were proposed by Apple.
Yeah, and the good thing, on the other hand, is here that we have the two wheelchairs, for example, the two different ones of wheelchairs. So it's not the one wheelchair that we are always seen as the blue white sign on cars, for example, or on toilets. But they are active and they are different. That's also one step, but it can be further.
Oh, sorry. There are many emojis that are also proposed, recently passed emojis that deal with more cultural subjects. I think these often get a lot of attention in the media. Sometimes the headlines are a little bit disparaging. They almost make fun of people who care very much about these topics, I feel. But these are some that were passed. The broccoli emoji, hijab emoji, sauna emoji, red envelope, which is important around Chinese New Year. And these are some that are being proposed and supported by different grassroots communities. The sombrero, an X-ray, cooking things. So foods, clothing, different cultural representations, these are things that show up. Emoji Nation is a group that has been involved in supporting and helping different groups of people around the world really refine their proposals and suggest them to the Unicode consortium. There are other proposals that then are sort of more on the sidelines, like the inclumoji. Anybody can make an emoji set, and lots of people do them. But this kind of official approval, this official adoption that would make them accessible through many different platforms is still important. Yudia, I was hoping you could maybe, as a professor, explain to us, why do people care so much about this? How is it that we're using emojis that this much significance has been attributed to them?
Yeah, I think that emoji are just becoming more and more important in online communication, right? So one problem in written communication over the internet is that we don't have direct interaction with people. We don't see their faces, we don't see their gestures, we don't hear their voices. So there's a lot of information that's missing when people talk online. And we've tried to kind of recreate some of that missing information by first including emoticons and maybe some other things. And now this is getting more and more replaced by emoji. So actually in the linguistic research into emoji, we try to see, well, how are they being used and what are they being used for? And one thing that is very important there is that they're used for expressing emotions, right? So typically they're used at the end of sentences to give some connotations, mark sarcasm or something like that. So it's actually not very surprising to me that the table emoji is missing from Unicode, because there's just no one that feels strongly enough about tables to really need to include that in their message, right? So for these kind of things, we already have words, right?
I put this in, and it's an anecdote from a friend who was sending these emojis to her boyfriend all the time because she thought that they were chocolate and like a Hershey's kiss. And eventually he thought it was funny and he sent her tomatoes. And she said, "Why are you sending me tomatoes?" And he said, "Well, you always send me silly emojis." So how do we understand emojis? This is a nice website that you introduced me to. Can you explain what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so on this website, they track the real-time use of emoji on Twitter. So in the real live website, this would be flickering with all the emoji as they're being used in real time. And so you can use it to see which kind of emojis people actually use frequently. And if we scroll to the top, we would see that they're mostly faces, kind of these different emotions. But one of the top 10 emoji that's in there that I like to point out that speaks to some of the issues that you talked about is the green recycling symbol. So that's always in the top 10 emoji. And maybe people here in the room
how many people
Yeah.
in the room have used a recycling emoji recently? One.
Or could you guess what it's being used for? Because what the other thing you can do is that you can click on the emoji and see how they're being used. And if you clicked on this recycling symbol, then you would see that it's mostly being used by Muslims reposting passages from their holy scriptures. And there, the green color has a cultural significance, and the cycle symbol signifies this reposting of things that you're supposed to repost.
Also about their relatives, other people that are dead from the family, when they post stuff about them, they also use it.
Yeah, so there's a specific cultural significance that we don't share here in this room, so we haven't used it, but that's a frequent use. And actually, these are some other examples. I had one student, undergraduate student, who did a little study on misinterpretation of emojis, and she picked these emojis to try and test other people as to how they would interpret them and how they would use them. So we can audience.
Oh yeah, we can ask if you're chatting on Slack. You're welcome to join this conversation. But I wonder if anybody would like to say what they understand from this symbol. Yeah.
For me, that's a thank you.
So for me, that's a thank you. But if you write in Slack, it comes out as pray.
Mm-hmm. So. And what about this one with the X's for eyes? Any thoughts on what that means?
What is always like, wow.
Martina thinks it's wow.
Like shocked or something. That's what I would think.
Shocked, dead.
And it's like, oh no.
Oh no. Is there? What is it?
No way.
I think it's officially called a dizzy face. I'm not sure.
The fun fact: when you're blind and you're using VoiceOver on your smartphone, then you can hear what it means. So blind people don't misuse them.
But they would still misinterpret the emoji that they get sent, maybe, if somebody else has used it wrong, right? I mean, this is what typically happens, right? That people...
They would really be offended by the poop emoji in a love message. Do we have too many emojis, Daniel?
Well, I think the more we have, the less we use them. Also, I use very few emoji, and I use them very often. Yeah, I also use them when Apple suggests me, to get, how do you say, you get a word and then you can replace it with the emoji. So normally I don't scroll to the right very long, because you can scroll for ages. And yeah, I think when you compare it to the emoticons, yeah, these were quite a few. It was 10 or 15, and yeah, maybe we...
Emoticons being the ones that you write with the colon and the paragraph, as opposed to these...
Yeah, and they are so easy to find because they're all on the classic keyboard. So maybe there are too many, but maybe it's also the interface for input that's not really perfect yet. Also, it's a good task, I think, for every young interaction designer to develop easier access to emoji.
You also made a point when we spoke yesterday that maybe it would be easier to make everybody happy with less emoji.
Yeah, maybe in fonts, in classic text fonts, there are different subsets. We have basic Latin for the European languages, Latin extended, and so on. We don't have all signs, all glyphs for all languages in a font, and maybe here a basic set for everyday use would help, and then you have a special set if you're a brain surgeon and need some special brain surgeon emoji to talk to your colleagues.
How does the rest of our panel feel about that?
Well, I think that we already have words and language for many things, right? So my impression is that if we use a word, it's oftentimes vague or under-specified for certain characteristics, right? So if I write family, it could include all kinds of families with 1, 2, or 0 children, different parents, and so on. But if I pick an emoji instead, then I have to suddenly choose, and I have to choose a very particular visual depiction of this concept. So yeah, I mean, as a linguist, I like language, and I think that we have, words, and the meaning of the words can change in a way that maybe the meaning of the pictures doesn't really adapt well enough to what we want to say. So.
Yeah, for disabled people, it's maybe about mainstream, to be in there, to be in the various emoticons and be represented. It's about representation, even if you don't know disabled people, and that's normally the case, sadly. You can see maybe that there's also a space woman with a disability or something, and maybe the idea would be also to we have these all kinds of jobs and superwoman, superheroes, and sportsmen and women. There just to choose one, maybe one skin color or one with a disability, and then we have to use them all.
So it's a bit the same problem as with the male and female forms in German. Yeah, that's also a problem in language. Yeah, because you can't represent us all equal in the grammatic forms.
Exactly, yeah. So if you speak some other language that doesn't have gender distinctions, then it's easy, right? And if you translate into German, then suddenly you have to pick, do you mean male painter or female one? And it's kind of even more the case for these emoji, I think, because there's so many distinctions that we might want to make. Yeah. And I don't know if it's, I mean, I see the point of needing representation, definitely, right? So once we have a family there, why not have one that has a child in a wheelchair, for example, right? Obviously, you want to be represented in that way. But yeah, that's the problem of having this picture at all, right? And then suddenly I have to choose.
But then everybody's asking, does she really have a child in a wheelchair, or is it just the emoji that represents? Yeah, is it
but
by chance?
When it's the only one that stands for all, so that was the idea, maybe.
Does anybody in the audience have anything they would like to share on this topic, or something that they feel strongly about in terms of representation, or questions for the panel? Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Ephraim from Kenya, and I'm sorry I'm late. I tried to look for this place, but the GPS points to the other side of the river. So I went to the river, and I was wondering maybe like the office is in like a submarine or something. Like I thought it was that cool, but I'm happy I'm here. One thing that maybe a debate that is happening in my part of the world is about, for example, the emojis of the 2 guys and a kid, or the 2 girls and a kid, and the issue of it's still a debate, and for me, I have my personal views that the more the better. For me, I believe the more the better. So but some government officials would want some emojis not to be there like that because, quote unquote, it is against some cultures, which I don't subscribe to, but some government officials who I'm sure some of you might have heard about the current arrests of journalists, bloggers, and internet freedom advocates in Tanzania and some parts of the world. So that's something which I'm just curious about the cultural angle. Like, the more are we propagating other cultures by having some emojis? Should we have more, for example, in Middle East, the types of veils that women wear, there are different veils, like the one which shows the face versus the one which only shows the eyes when you're about to get married. So should we have more of that? And yeah.
I think we have to. We're on the way. We have many details in there. So yeah, if there are a family with 4 white people, there has to be a family with 4 black people or 2 black. And then we have endless options, yeah, 2 by 2 and so on. So it will be many variations. So I think we need a new emoji file format, which is connected to the semantics, because when we make then thousands of different family emojis, so from a technical point, it has to be solved, and it will be solved. Also, I think it's necessary when they are so detailed. Then yeah, everybody should be represented. Also, I think it's no question. But
We still, I can't recall any stories of emoji censorship per se at the technical level so far.
Yeah. I mean, there's the case of the gun emoji that I think, I mean, that's not censorship per se, but I think it was a conscious decision, first by one technology company and then the others to switch it to a non-realistic, like toy kind of gun. And that I think was a political decision, at least in my opinion, right?
that's a problem I really have with emoji in general. Yeah, we have this cute little plastic gun, but the world is not that cute out there. So I think it's quite strange that adult people communicate with these funny things here. Yeah, it doesn't really match to reality. As we see bad things happen, and we only have these funny little comic images. So maybe emoji should get a bit more serious.
But as a type designer, you should be familiar with the way how to interpret a glyph. So you can, make a letter A can look very differently. Could look like Comic Sans,
right?
But
Yeah.
it also could look seriously. And I think the way how the emojis are executed by the operating system is just their decision.
It's such a major trend, and everybody's going for it. Yeah.
Maybe yes, but maybe if you want a real metal gun, you should change your device to another provider, probably.
But also, I mean, it's a kind of language, so people are going to use it in the way they want to use it, right? So there are many examples of emoji that are being used in ways that maybe they aren't intended for, like the peach emoji, and there's other examples. So people will adapt, right, to the kind of options they have in language.
But I wonder whether somebody will propose a real gun emoji now, because it's all the green plastic guns, so there's no real guns in there. Many people like guns, so it would be funny to have Unicode number XXX, the real gun. Or I don't know. I think, I personally think emoji should represent every aspect of life, the good stuff and the bad stuff, because when you take the real guns out of emoji, the world won't become better. It's a bit a childish thing, I think.
There's a question.
So I'm thinking simply, what do you think about the some of these emojis might even be illegal in some countries? I'm thinking like the homosexual couples, and this is illegal in some countries, or it's at least the propaganda is illegal. Or to have an example about Germany, the Nazi flag would be illegal. and maybe it's not illegal in other countries. So this probably even complicates more the issues. What's your take?
Well, you can use the same emojis either in a disparaging way or in how they were intended by their creators, or in a different way to harass or abuse.
Not sure whether the swastika, it might be in Unicode already. I'm not sure about that because it's also an Indian symbol, but I would be I don't want to talk about swastikas because but as for the homosexuals, for example, as I think it's okay when emojis represent all varieties and everything we have in they're a picture of a reality. So when somebody censors something, then it's their decision, but I would include there is for sure Hammer and Sichel, the communist symbol that is in Unicode, not in the emoji set, but in the other Unicode part, and I would include it all. But of course I wouldn't. And in Germany, it's good that it's not allowed to show that bad stuff anymore.
But we also have words, right? I mean, I'm still not convinced that we need a symbol for everything that could exist in the world, right? We have words that are abstractions, right? So even if you get your table emoji, it might be a brown table and not a white one, or it might be tall and not a little coffee table.
And yet, even though these symbols are so simple, you said also that they help people express nuance in
yes,
writing.
I think so. People are creative by using language and using these symbols to express themselves, right?
Do people usually, are they telling the truth when they use emojis? That was something you mentioned the other day.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, I talked about the emotionality when using emojis. So I had a student who wanted to investigate the use of emoji in lying. And so she devised a study where she had people write and receive little text messages either with emoji or without, and trying to judge whether this was, telling the truth or a little white lie, like I can't come to the party because I'm too busy or whatever. And she found that actually, at least in her study, people were using more emoji when they're being truthful. Maybe because it's harder to lie about what you're feeling while you're writing something, or there could be other reasons. We're not quite sure as to the reasons, but she did find some clear differences there. Yeah.
Rosanna?
Yeah, so maybe taking the discussion more towards that direction. I guess that there's been a generation that has been now increasingly growing up looking more at screens and using emojis to express emotion. I'm just out of curiosity, do you know of any studies that start to look into if there have been any changes in the way that people, or especially children, in general people too, how they train or how accurate they can actually see an emotion in someone else, because these are, as you said, I mean, these are just a couple of them. They don't express the full nuance, but at the same time, the more communication passes through these emojis, the less chances people actually have to interact with other people and sort of start getting to the nuances of communication. And so I'm just wondering if this is something that has been somehow studied in the conversation.
Yeah, this is definitely something that's being studied. So you're bringing in a lot of different things. One thing that I know that some colleagues of mine that I know through Twitter are really interested in is how young children use emoji. Young children who maybe aren't able to write that well yet, right? So I know from my son, when he first got cell phone, he started sending very many emojis, messages with only emojis or only punctuation, question marks and upside down question marks and so on.
Read them? Could you read them?
Well, I read them. I was puzzling over how to interpret them. But definitely it was hard for him to type individual words. So he was trying to directly express something with these emoji. As to whether he's correctly interpreting or not, as a linguist, I am kind of careful to say whether people use language correctly or not. I mean, we don't really have this category. We try to capture, how people actually use language, and that includes emojis. So if the use changes into something else than it was meant to be originally, that's fine, right? That is language change.
And other than misunderstandings about emojis, are there certain parts of the world that maybe don't use them at all as much? I was talking to a woman who works with Emoji Nation, and she was saying that they were really looking for people to make proposals from West Africa. I don't, Ephraim, you're from East Africa, but could I put you on the spot? Do people use emojis in the countries that you've traveled to in your region as much as people do here?
Okay, so it also depends on the issue of age. Younger people use more emojis than older people, though recently I noticed my mom is texting me in emojis. That was interesting. And also the issue of also for example, race. If and for example, the darker an emoji it is, the lighter it is. There's that split, and some people who are like very pro-African, they want everything dark and the emojis dark and stuff. So it depends with how the culture. So there's no like one specific culture, and for example, like that hijab emoji, that would be more common in, for example, if it's in Kenya or in East Africa towards the east, the northeast provinces, not the western side. So it depends also exactly like, because we have like this cosmopolitan different culture and religions that is different, and also gender. I think maybe that's another thing that maybe we need to look at. You might find maybe a man using more male emojis and less female. Like if you just go through your WhatsApp, how many of you here use WhatsApp? WhatsApp, yeah, it's now more common. Like a few years back, before it was bought by Facebook, it was you'd only find Africans or Asians using WhatsApp. You look at the most recent used WhatsApp emojis, you'll notice maybe a pattern or a gender that maybe you yourself, as a person, maybe you're not aware that you're using more male or more female emojis as a person, and maybe that's something which, if there's a study around it, or maybe you can highlight that. And also the color, yeah, and that might vary from place to place. I think there's a lot of, this is a field that has a lot of opportunities for further studies, especially around internet freedom. And I gave the example how some governments in even my part of the world, that the gay emoji, and they're not very comfortable with it. They're like, how do we talk to Facebook? They need to remove this from WhatsApp. So like that bothers someone who is a government official with 30 years experience. So that's something which may be a field of study, and its connection with internet health and internet freedom. It's something that there's a lot of space for that. Yeah.
Any final remarks? Any final questions?
This is actually quite interesting. How would the government censor, if they don't want to have the gay emoticon or emoji, how would they get rid of it? I think it's not possible. It's quite powerful, because once you have it, maybe you're not able to get rid of it if you even want to.
Well, I don't know about the technical details, but there are other examples where internet companies are complying with governmental rules in certain regions, right? Like think about China. So I think it's possible for a company to decide that we take out these code points from our font and we don't provide the pictures.
Yeah, when there are no gay people in that country, then they can take it out.
That's just dark humor, right?
I think it's generally it's funny. People try to censor or take stuff out of the emoji, and then they think it will disappear in the real world. As it's just funny.
We had a question in Slack about the meanings of emojis. Can I ask that right now? Or okay, we had that slide before with misunderstood emojis, and someone would like to know what the correct understanding would be and what might be a misunderstood usage.
For which one?
For all of them.
I don't remember exactly. So the closed hands is a thank you symbol from Japan. Oh, some people are nodding. You can support me here if you know. The O lady, she's making an O, yeah. So it's an OK symbol, I guess. The open hands are just called open hands, although many people use it for clapping, I think. The stars is a dizzy symbol, like in comics. So, but people also use it as, you know, a star or something is great or something like that. And the waving lady, I don't remember. I think she's like a receptionist or something. That is the official definition. Yeah, you're nodding. So, but people would use it just for hi or for like half a shrug or something like that. Yeah.
Nobody says hi like that.
Well, but just, I mean, it's very small, right? Typically. So here it's very big, but just like a hi, right? And then the other is the dizzy face, I think the first one that is often used for shock instead.
You mentioned, Daniel, that many of them have Japanese origin?
Yeah, the first emoji were from a Japanese company, NTT Docomo, 12 on 12 pixels. That was quite cool because it was very fast way to make emoji. So yeah, we recently worked on new OpenEmoji, and then we had stuff like a red flower, and we wondered what was written inside. And there's written inside, "You made that well." And it's a flower that Japanese pupils get when they are good in school. And there's a lot of stuff from Japan, like the red lantern. That's for a certain type of bar or restaurant in Japan. And yeah, I think Japanese, they use emoji a lot, and they have all the stuff that is important for them in there. But it would be interesting to make a project and really collect important stuff from different regions of the world and see what's the important topics for people, yeah, in East or West Africa, and yeah, then see what will be in there as well. But yeah, I'm really curious. I think the evolution won't stop. I don't want more emoji, because when we want to make all our OpenEmoji to the Unicode standard, then our work will never end. But I think it will never stop. Yeah, we have no chance.
So we have emojis with different skin colors, for example. So some people could like just pick the emoji that matches yourself best. But for example, if we now get emojis with all the different emotions with people in a wheelchair, how would you, Judita, for example, feel if I started using the wheelchair emojis? Would you feel that's inappropriate, or would you like feel like it's good that someone starts using other emojis?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with the skin color. Some people who are white just use black ones because they want just to appreciate the knowledge of diversity. You know, they want to just show that skin color doesn't matter to them, so they use this black ones. It would be very cool if we just use them, and that's why, I made the proposal to just make them, and maybe don't have the variety on some spots. That is what we call disability mainstreaming. We just want to be a part of the society. We want to just not be a problem or something you have to be pitiful about. And so that would be great.
Yeah, just another point. I think we should always remember the original of the wording of the name emoji. And so the role of the emojis is not to deliver a complete set of, objects we like to communicate. For this, we have words. What they deliver is an emotional component that it's hard to express by words, and this is, I think, the task for the emojis. And taking it this way, yeah, maybe we already have too many, and we can stop sometime, or we should prove every new suggestion if it has an emotional component. I've seen it in these suggestions. If you show it 2 slides forward, or 1 or 2 slides, this silencer, is it called silencer? Schnuller?
Oh, pacifier.
Yeah. So this has probably a high emotional component, because you can use it if you really have somebody outraged in a communication. I said, so calm down and to not upset him.
I'm not sure whether it will work when you send the thing.
I would use it as an insult, you baby.
Maybe yes.
I understand somebody has got a child or something.
Yeah.
Well, clearly this is a topic that people feel very strongly about, and that's why there are grassroots movements and there are people who are campaigning and advocating for proper representation, however they feel that's best for them. I'd like to thank my panelists. We have sandwiches outside, we have bathrooms too, and they're that way. I was asked to tell you. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We can continue the conversation outside. Thank you, all Mozilla offices who watched with us. If you have more questions on Slack, just post them. We're waving back to you. Have a nice evening, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.